will be able to baptize your firstborn child, even bringing in the Pope to do so. This again feeds into the new revised papal mechanics, as someone who is baptized by the Pope will have an easier time dealing with him.
You can actually play Mansa Musa Twitch chat.
Lots of bug fixing and way more minor features than I have time to go into. Making Holy Fury has been an amazing experience and genuinely the most fun I've ever had making an expansion. I hope you enjoy unleashing Holy Fury upon your enemies.
Yeah, they added mechanics for Mansa Musa, so you can actually play as the Emperor of Mali, take all the gold mines of Africa, and then just run around the world being the richest motherfucker on the planet. They didn't even talk about it in the video. It was pretty funny. You have to basically unite all of West Africa and then be rich as fuck, and then you need to rebuild the Saharan trade lines. Then once you do that, you can do some shit with the gold mines, and eventually you basically get to be Mansa Musa. I can't remember if he's in the game or not. I don't know if he's in their timeline. Oh, right. Okay, they lane swapped. That's brilliant.
Prepare to die.
Well, it looks interesting because one of the things in Crusader Kings that they've done is a whole alternate history thing. And whereas EU4 tries to be way more historical, Crusader Kings has long given up on being historical. So if you want to take Mansa Musa's money and turn West Africa into the cradle of civilization, then fuck it. They just kind of go do it, you know? Have fun with it. Kennen is such a fun and interesting character with all the counterplay he has. I parried 2 of his stun procs and he's like, don't worry, I had 3 more. Haha, you fool. Meanwhile, he's just throwing infinite fucking abilities at me the entire laning phase. So, Holy Fury does look interesting, though, because they're giving you a whole lot of things to do. Basically, everything other than the Muslim world and the Indian world are getting an update. And the Indian world just got an update last expansion. Well, it wasn't actually really the Indian world, but whatever. Though I think, to be fair, I'm pretty sure Muslims are still the strongest in that game. So, yeah. What about Alexander the Great? He should wipe out the Muslims. Great idea, Twitch chat. Alright, just to give you guys a brief timeline. Persian Empire happened. They beat up everyone. Alexander happened. He beats up the Persians. Alexander dies. His general fights amongst themselves over the remains of his empire. Romans come in, beat up everyone. Some dude named Jesus is like, hey man, those Romans suck. They should get out. Romans are like, hey, let's kill Jesus. Jesus gets killed. Couple hundred years later, Muhammad, by couple hundred, I mean 630 years later? 630 years later, Muhammad's like, hey, Jesus was a great guy and all, but he wasn't actually the son of God. He was just a prophet. Then he conquers all of Persia and Egypt and Syria and North Africa and then also Spain. Well, that wasn't actually Muhammad, but Muslims did it anyway. Couple hundred years after that, Turks come in, and the Turks are like, you guys, you're not like true Muslims. I know we just converted, but we're like the truest Muslims, and we're gonna conquer you guys, and because we're like the Muslimiest Muslims. Turks conquer Jerusalem. They're like, hey, Christians don't have access to Jerusalem because like they haven't converted yet. Egyptian Muslims are like, hey, you can't do that. The Christians kind of believe in the same God, so they belong in Jerusalem. Crusaders are like, ree! And then they're like, ree! A couple hundred years later, they're still going, ree! And then the Ottomans killed them all. And then the Ottomans killed everyone for a while. And then the Ottomans died. And then Germany was the new big enemy. And then Germany died. And then Russia was the new big, and then Russia died. So I should say the Soviet Union.
Do not hesitate. Sharp blade, sharp mind.
I'm feeding myself with some real bullshit. Actually, I mean, that's pretty much exactly how it happened. The only moderately successful crusades were the 1 through 3. And the third one didn't even succeed. It just made the Muslims go, okay, fine. We'll open Jerusalem again. The first crusade conquered shit. The second crusade conquered shit. Then the Muslims came back and were like, give us our shit back. And then they conquered shit back. And then Richard the Lionheart was like, no, give us the shit that we conquered back. We conquered it fair and square. But he didn't have a big enough army. And so he was like, all right, well, just let us in Jerusalem and we'll be cool. And the Muslims are like, yeah, okay. Oh yeah, and the Mongols came through. But in the grand scheme of things, were the Mongols really that important? Not really. I mean, what did they do? They burned down some shit. But then what? They just kind of went away.
Such unlike style.
I mean, I guess you could say they ended the Muslim Golden Age, so that kind of sucked for the Muslims. Didn't I just ward this shit?
Enemy killing spree.
No, I'm fairly certain it wasn't the Muslims ending their own golden age. I'm fairly certain it was the skull pyramids that did it, Twitch chat.
I succeed.
Let me tell you the numbers one more time, just so you guys can get it. Genghis Khan killed about 10% of the world's population. He mostly invaded Persia and the steppes. Tamerlane killed 5% of the world's population. He pretty much invaded India and Persia and a little bit of the Iraq and stuff. Now, when you kill 10% of the world's population, but it's all pretty much coming from one area, that means that, you know, you're kind of wiping out one area of the world. There was no way I was getting first turret. Are you kidding me?
Do not hesitate.
Muslims were, well, I mean, it's hard to say. There was a lot of counterattacks against Islamic expansion at that time, but that's just, I mean, whenever someone's successful, they tend to be the target, right? Like, no one was giving a shit what the Catholics did, because the Catholics were mainly wiping out Slavic tribes. You know, who's angry about that?
Shout blade, shout knife.
Who's coming to the defense of the Slavic tribes?
Be a challenge.
Why are Slavics Christian when they got raped by the Crusaders? Because they were going to be continuously raped unless they converted. And you also have to remember that the Crusaders were trying to convert them to Catholicism when they were Orthodox. They were actually very successful in killing and converting the Slavs up until Novgorod. That's when the Teutonic Order was beaten by Novgorod. Which, if you're Russian, you would probably know because it's like celebrated and shit. The Teutonic Order was kind of on a rampage. They were like, let's kill all the Prussians, and then they converted and forcefully culture shifted the Prussians. And then they were like, let's kill all the Baltic people, and they kind of, once again, converted all the Baltic states. And then they were like, let's get the Russians now. And then the Russians actually beat them. And then they were like, wait, what the fuck? And then they were like, let's get the Lithuanians. And then the Lithuanians beat them. And they were like, what the fuck? And then they were like, let's attack the Polish. And the Polish were like, wait, but we're Catholic too. And they were like, yeah, but fuck you, we're a holy order. And then the Polish also beat them. And they were like, wait, what's going on?
Is this supposed to be a challenge?
Wait, what do you mean the Russians never beat the Teutons? That's actually like a really celebrated moment in Russian history when Novgorod defeated the Teutonic Order. Because the Teutonic Order had taken Prussia, they had taken the Baltic states, and they were pushing further east. And then Novgorod were the people that actually held them off. It's like a battle. It's pretty famous. I'm sure someone remembers its name. There you go, the battle on ice. Yeah, see, they were Christian, but they weren't the right kind of Christian, and therefore they had to die.
Shut down.
Yes, but the Poles and Lithuanians only beat the Teutonic Order after the Russians had beaten the Teutonic Order. The Teutonic Order was being a ginormous douche to everyone. That's actually one of the things people don't realize. The Teutonic Order was expelled by their own populace. Their own population went to Poland and was like, look, if we accidentally kick the Teutonic Order out of our country, will you come rule us? And then they were like, yeah. And then Poland went to defend the Prussian nobility. And then they took the Teutonic Order over.
It has been destroyed.
Precision and grace.
Your team has destroyed a turret.
And yeah, the Polish and Lithuanian also defeated them. Which is also important for the Polish and Lithuanian history. Shockingly, a lot of history in Europe comes from defeating the Germans. If you read history and know a bit, you'll notice that the Germans actually have a repeated history of trying to conquer everyone around them. Jesus Christ. That was 3 fucking stuns into a Rakan ult. That's with Merc Treads and everything. God, that champion is actually so retarded, dude. If you ever want to win top lane for free, you just play Kennen. What beats Kennen? You got Aatrox and Urgot can survive him and Sion can survive him. Like, it's just absurd to me. Like, this is why the top lane meta is the way that it is. If you don't first pick Aatrox or Urgot or Sion, they just pick, well, Kennen. And then Kennen beats you, because he's Kennen, and that's what he does. He just wins.
Your turret has been destroyed.
Strike quickly, strike deadly.
Yeah, well, Victor's pretty new to this scene, let's be fair. And let's also be fair, I doubt Victor's gonna keep showing up. He's gonna get nerfed here rather quickly, I feel. That hit me? Wait, Kennen didn't even show up. Brilliant. I mean, it's any of these retarded ass range shit like that. Like, how is it okay that a champion who's one of the biggest lane bullies in the game also is an amazing late game team fighter? It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's nonsense when you stop to think about it. I think you just walked into someone. No? Okay. Well, I don't have enough shit to fight you, so I'm just not. But he's squishy and predictable? Well, by squishy, you mean he gets bonus armor and MR during his lightning rush? And by predictable, you mean he doesn't actually have counterplay? Like, I can predict someone's about to punch me in the face, but unless I can do something to stop it, it doesn't really do me a whole lot of good. Now, does it, Twitch chat?
I have no equal.
You will now punch me in the face. Okay. Yeah, but I knew you were gonna do that, so... now you can't.
Frailty of your form.
Did he cancel his back, or did I don't... I mean, that was Kennen, right? Yeah, well, yeah, it has to be Kennen.
Others try. I succeed.
Please be alive. Oh, goody. I think, though, it's kind of funny that people idolize the Crusaders so much these days. Let's look back at the Crusaders. Knights Templar. They were bankers. They took loans. Or I should say they gave loans with interest. That was their sacred duty. To give loans with interest. The Teutonic Order. Genocidal maniacs. The Knights Hospitaller, genocidal maniacs who called it, you know, the Reconquista. We're taking back Spain, so that gives us justice to kill all the Moors. Let me think here. Did I say the Knights Hospitaller already? The Knights Hospitaller in Rhodes, the Knights of Rhodes, there we go. Pirates. Literally, actually just pirates. They just pirated the Turks. It's our sacred duty to take this booty. That was what they did. They literally sat on an island and pirated the Turks. And here's when it gets better, Twitch chat. When the Turks finally invaded the island and forced them off, the Turkish Sultan said, wow, you guys fought really good. If you promise to not raid us anymore, I'll let you leave with your life. And the knights were like, okay, we will leave, and on our word as a holy order, we won't pirate you anymore. So they left, went to Malta, and continued to pirate the Turks.
In the blink of an eye.
The Sultan was like, I'm such a good guy. I'll let them live and they'll respect me. They're like, LOL JK.
Enemy double kill.
I got ignited?
Your turret has been destroyed.
That's not called guerrilla warfare. They literally just raided and pirated the Turks. Like, they attacked their merchants. Even the other Christians were like, can you not? These are kind of our ships. There's a reason why when Rhodes was getting besieged, the Venetians were like, oh no, not Rhodes. Oh no, not the Knights. Oh no, what are we gonna do with them?
To the death. I succeed.
Literally just spamming every single ability on cooldown. It must be nice to be a ranged champion with no mana. I feel like if you want to win the game, you actually just have to ban Kennen. If you don't ban Kennen, you will always get counterpicked by Kennen. And there's just nothing you can do about it either. Like, the champion is just so retard.